February 1948 started off as an ordinary day. But by sunset, that day will be recorded as one of Ghana's bloodiest in history. Right at this spot was where 3 unarmed ex-servicemen were shot in cold blood.
By the end of World War II, imported consumer goods were so scarce in the Gold Coast and their prices were so high that the cost of living became very unbearable for majority of the population. The people accused members of the Association of West African Merchants (AWAM), traders of imported goods, of being the cause of this. As a result, a large campaign to boycott European and imported goods were launched in the Gold Coast in January 1948. The economic hardship was felt by all, but particularly the ex-servicemen who had returned from fighting in the Second World War. On 28 February 1948, a number of unarmed ex-servicemen embarked on a peaceful march from Accra to the Christiansborg Castle to present a petition to the Governor-General and the Commander-in-Chief, Sir Gerald Creasy, on failed promises on their end-of-service entitlements. They were intercepted at the Christiansborg crossroad by a contingent of armed policemen led by a British superintendent, Colin Emery. Without provocation, they opened fire at the ex-servicemen, killing Sergeant Cornelius Frederick Ajete first, and then Corporal Patrick Atipo and Private Odate Lamte instantly. I've come to meet Reverend Steve Mensah Okan Ajete, son of the late Sergeant Ajete, to hear his account of what happened on the day.
My father was very, very strict. My younger brother and I have to go to the Wager Dam to bath. And somehow we refused to bath. So my father came, told us, please, you have to go by all means to bath. So my younger brother and I went and were bathing. While we were bathing, we saw somebody passing by and we became frightened because it was dark. And then we started bathing quickly to leave the person. When we started, then the man also started running after us. We didn't know it was our father who was laying the trick on us.
He explained that due to the civil unrest at the time, he barely spent time with his father. Sadly, he didn't get the chance to see his father for the last time before he died.
We were together in the family when he left us. You know, at that time, there was confusion in Ghana. Somebody took me on a bicycle because there was confusion in the country. And they would not, in fact, people were not allowed to drive in cars or something like that. But this man took me and he brought me all the way to La. Nobody was thinking something will happen. All I know is that Daddy was taking in an ambulance, if I can remember, and brought to the hospital. And I think at that time, at that point, I got to know that my father was no more. It saddened me so much. It saddened me so much. Well, I had to accept it like that. I know they were going to the castle. I know they were going to the castle. Usu. And while on the way, some white people decided to shoot at random. Imre wanted to shoot, and Atia said they shouldn't shoot. About twice, he refused to shoot. And the third time, Imre himself shot. And that's how it happened that my father was the first to be shot. Then Corporal Tipo, Private Odate, they also went down.
In the later interview, where he spoke candidly about the shooting, the Superintendent of Police, Sir Collins Imrie, believed he made the right decision at the time to open fire at the demonstrators.
This procession was permitted to go to the Secretariat, where it would be received by a senior government officer who would take it to Sir Gerald Creasy, the governor, and that this Secretariat was well off the direct route through the town up towards Government House. Saturday morning, February the 28th, in Accra, was significant. The trade boycott was to be lifted, and also the procession was due to start around 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I spent that morning in the town trying to sense the atmosphere, and it became apparent to me that there was an air of disappointment over the prices in the town of foodstuffs and imported goods, which everybody had hoped were going to be lowered, but they weren't lowered to the amount that had been hoped. From 2 o'clock onwards, I watched the progress of this procession. It formed up in military style, at that stage being mainly composed of ex-servicemen, and I hoped that from that point they might, after all, do what the procession permit had authorised them to do, and that was go to the Secretariat, receive the permit, and then break off and go away. But they didn't. They went straight down into the town in military formation, and during their progress down the town, they were joined by all sorts of thugs in and around Accra, who certainly were not ex-servicemen. My dispatch riders came every now and again to tell me what was happening. The telephone from certain points that I had arranged down the town worked very well. I knew that the procession liable to go astray, at least I feared it, because they were down in the middle of the town, and all they had to do now, if things were going to go wrong, was go straight towards Government House. And they did. The police came out and tried to stop them, then brushed aside without any trouble at all. So, into my lorry I got my armed men, and away we went. We all converged, and we only got there just in time. The procession was by that time extremely noisy. Many of them were carrying sticks, so brandishing aloft. They were singing and shouting and making a tremendous noise. We got there just in time, and I deployed the men across the road. I ordered a bugler to sound the action, and I stepped forward, put up my hand, and I shouted out to these people, both in English and in Hausa, to stop. There was a leader in front with another man, and this leader was blowing a sort of wooden trumpet and urging people forward. Again my hand went up, and I said, "You're going to stop or I'm going to open fire." They were quite clearly coming forward again by this time, and we were going to get engulfed. So finally I shouted, "Fire!" Not a single shot went off. I seized a rifle from one of the men, and I fired 6 shots. I fired at the man with the horn, fired at his deputy, and I killed them both. And I fired 4 more shots. As these 2 went down, so the crowd started to surge back. And by that time, then I fired 1 more shot, and they started to run. I fired 3 more shots, and they were all helter-skelter away down the road. And that was really the end of the story to a large extent.
This is the La Cluster of schools, and behind me is what is remaining of a grave of one of Ghana's iconic personalities in the struggle for freedom.
I understand this was a place where they buried nobles, and so when the incident happened, the people of La whisked his body away from the mortuary and buried him without the consent of the government at the time. And so, knowing that this was a place for nobles, they put him in the right place. It's just as time went on, this place has been deserted, and not much attention has been given to this place, so it's in this state. So I think the rest lies on us to do the needful. There's quite a lot that went on from the little research that I did. I think a lot of emphasis was given to the fact that they just went marching, asking for money, but there was much more to that. There are aspects in some of the reports that actually highlights some of the demands they were making, free prisoners. You know, there were a whole lot of things that they were demanding for, and not just their pay. You know, what we have in the history books make it sound as if the ex-servicemen were. It was all about their salary or whatever they could get, but it was more than that. And it will interest you to know that there were 2 groups. The one group that were the conformists, if I would use the word, and my grandfather and his group were not those conforming. And if I say conformists, those who were listening, or let's say conforming to whatever the colonial government was telling them. And so on the day of the event, they had a certain route that was earmarked. They had their proposed route, and when they went to speak to the then governor, they said, no, you can't use that route. And my grandfather and his colleagues were like, no, we've been petitioning you for quite some time and we're not getting answers. We think that this route that we're going to use will draw more attention, and so we're going to use that. So the conformists went on their parade using the route that was allowed by the British authorities. And after they finished, my grandfather and his group mobilized, I think, about 2,000 plus men, and they used the route they wanted to use. And so they went in opposition to whatever the British government agreed on. They wanted to go and hand over the petition directly to the governor, and there was a barricade, and they said no. According to Imre, I listened to him. He said the chants from the crowd, end of, this is the last end of colonial rule and blah blah blah. There was mixed. So they were very uncomfortable because they knew that if they go past that barricade, there was going to be chaos wherever they wanted to go, because they were going to the seat of government with all that crowd. So Imre targeted the leaders of the group. First he asked them to fire, and somebody in the crowd was saying in Hausa, don't fire, and so they were still advancing. And he targeted the leader. He referred to him as the one with a horn or something, with a flute or something. So he shot him first, and then he shot the other 2 ICs. Yeah. I refer to their death as the 3 shots to African independence. And I say African independence because it was, the spark of the Ghanaian independence that started the freedom or liberation for the whole African continent. So the 3 shots is 3 shots to African independence, and they paid the price for it. And I think it hasn't been emphasized much. We haven't really idolized them enough on the African stage, and even on the local stage. Not many people know much about him. I think it's even missing in the books and all of that. So yeah, we need to rewrite it and highlight some of these things that took place.
What do you know about the grave?
In JHS3, I learned he was short. He was just short. The policemen at the Osu Christian Castle. What I know that they said that time. They said that time. They said that time. They should come and collect their money. And when they was going and they were shot by the British people.
Know about the grave is when Sergeant Adete went to collect, he and his friends went to collect the money from the governor. And he said that he promised us that he will give us our money. So the government told the rest of the soldiers to come and shoot all of them. So they were shot and they were dead.
What do you know about the grave? What have you been told about the grave?
I've been told that he was shot by the British.
Why?
What I heard about him, that's what I thought.
Okay, thank you.
He also tells me that his attempt to meet with the remaining family of Sir Collins Imrie, the man who shot and killed his grandfather, was unsuccessful.
Well, I felt that not Imre himself, but his family, because he passed on. But I wanted to reach out to them because I think this is a new era. What has happened is gone. I think it was time for reconciliation and a time to use that bond between us and them to do something to avoid anything that had happened in the past, so that we should use that as a healing process and also to create a stronger bond between the British and the African, and to say never again. Well, I contacted the Imre family through their MP in the UK, but the response sort of sounded like they were not too comfortable to meet, because to them, somebody in Africa, they probably don't know what would come out of it. Maybe I was trying to trace them and come and revenge or kill them or something, but that was not part of the plan.
There are many accounts of events that led to the attainment of Ghana's independence in 1957. But to what extent did the event of the 28th February 1948 contribute to this?
This nation owes so much to the veterans who actually paid the ultimate price on that fateful day of 28th February 1948, in particular, and soldiers in general. Because even when the history of the nation is written, all that we know is that it was the Big Sis who actually fought for the political independence of this country. But some of us shudder to disagree, because it was the veterans, the servicemen, who actually set the blaze. They actually blazed the trail. They set up everything before the politicians cashed in. Because before then, they were doing all the talks the negotiations. But you realize that the British were also unwilling to just hand over power like that. But it was the agitations by these ex-servicemen which finally led to the unfortunate death of the three that sparked the political movement that finally led to Ghana's attainment of independence. Don't forget that as a result of the death of the three veterans, a commission, Watson Commission, was set up to look into the causes of the death and the subsequent riots. And then the commission's recommendation was early handover of political power to the indigents. So it must be obvious that but for that unfortunate death, or for the unfortunate deaths of the three ex-servicemen which led to the agitation, Ghana's independence wouldn't have been proclaimed on 6 March 1957. It would have been delayed. In 2014, a committee was set up to look at the possibility of exhuming the remains of Comrade Ajete to be reburied. The committee was made up of representatives of Veterans Administration Ghana. I represented VAG, the Museum Board, Monuments and Museum Board was also represented. We had a pathologist from University of Ghana, Legon, and other bodies. Traditional Council was also represented, and the committee was chaired by the former Army Commander General Odwete. I must say that our report was ready. We were done with our report, a copy of which I have over here. Unfortunately, the recommendations of the committee have not been implemented. And it's a very sad story.
Every burial site has its own significance in terms of how you look at it. And Sergeant Ajete and all the other heroes that died during the 1948 riots, it's not a mean feat for somebody. In fact, in their own right, they qualify to be national heroes. So if they are qualified as such, it means that the space, their final resting place, is equally important to inspire the young ones. So why not? It's qualified to be called a national monument.
In 2012, the Nationalism Pack was commissioned in honor of the three ex-servicemen who were killed at the Crossroads shooting. And every year, on the 28th of February, wreath-laying ceremonies are held here in their honor. But 73 years after the shooting of these ex-servicemen at the Crossroads, have we acknowledged these three heroes well enough?
I think that what they stood for, what they fought for, we've short-lived it. We haven't done enough, to meet the aims and objectives, what they stood for. We haven't done enough as a nation, and it's very disappointing.
The gratuity that was due my father, I wish could be given to we, his children, because we feel it is really necessary. If by now, right from Nkrumah's time, the presidents have been able to think of my father and his colleagues, that would have helped us very, very much. That recognition is not there at all. If in national independence celebrations and whatnot, you recognize us, we'll be very, very glad.
We honor and salute our courageous soldiers, dead and alive, who fought, toiled, and paid the ultimate price with their lives for Ghana's independence.